Hey, this is Notser, and this is the Tier 6 U.S. carrier Independence. It has 3 squadrons with 6 aircraft each. I'm running with 1 fighter, 1 torpedo, and 1 dive bomber. It has 26 AA guns, 2 secondary guns, a top speed of 32 knots, total held 35,300. Modules used: increase fighter gun effectiveness, fighters have better survivability, lower chance of flood and fire, and for my commander, basic survivability, faster torpedo rearm, and dogfighting expert. We are on the map Two Brothers, and it's a 2v1 scenario. I'm a tier 6 going up against 2 tier 5s. I want to engage this fighter before his allies can support him, try and take him out, and then focus on the next squadron that shows up. I don't want to engage 2 fighter squadrons at the same time. I'm going to lose that. Even though I'm a higher tier, it's not an ideal scenario. So we're engaged with this guy near the gap. We're also preventing any enemies from moving through the gap because of the scouting potential. And this is far too close for being 1 tier higher. These are fully upgraded, and I have extra survivability on the fighters. So I shouldn't have been that close, but I'll take it. So I decide to bring him back. I see that the Japanese carrier sent his fighters just a little too slow, so we're going to be able to rearm and repair. And a lot of my allies are headed to the west side of the map. I'm going to head with them. Now, as a carrier, it's important that you're able to rearm relatively quickly and maintain contact with your allies to provide them with support, and they provide you with support. So I really like to keep up with the front. A lot of my guys are moving west. They're bunched up. They're going to have great AA coverage. I keep my torpedo and my dive bomber near them, especially the cruisers, and I force the enemy to try and kill my squadrons while underneath this defensive fire. And you can just see this squadron is being melted by the combined force of 3 cruisers. Don't recommend going after enemy squadrons that have protection like this. This is a little extreme, and he probably felt like he needed to do something to prevent me from doing damage to him. Well, he did something. He's giving up his squadrons. I see that the enemy is trying to assault my carrier, so I'm going to maneuver, and I'm also going to send out my fighters to engage the dive bomber before he attacks. Whenever fighters are engaged or defensive fire is up for a cruiser, the dive bomber and the torpedo bombers are less accurate. And it's a huge advantage. And I'm just going to kill this squadron before. The dive bomber is nowhere near the attack run position, so I don't have to make his attack less accurate. Now, you can use shift commands. Anyone who's played an RTS recently, like StarCraft 2 or Company of Heroes, Command and Conquer, you can use attack command on a point, and then if you hold shift, you can add more attack commands to be run after the initial command. So I can have all of my fighters queued up to attack the enemy squadrons in the order I want them to. I don't have to babysit them, and I can focus more on dive bombing and torpedo bombing these enemies that are trying to go through the gap. This guy, not an ideal scenario, don't have a lot of room to maneuver, and he is able to avoid 2 of our torpedoes, but we do pretty good damage between our dive bombers and our torpedo bombers. The US dive bombers are more accurate and do more damage than the Japanese, whereas the Japanese can carry more torpedo bombers and dive bombers, but are less accurate. That's the trade-off you have to work with, but it's an interesting mechanic. I like playing all the classes. I like to understand their strengths and weaknesses so I can better play as and play against. The worst thing you can do on Two Brothers is go through the gap against an enemy aircraft carrier. That I am sure of, and I would recommend you don't do that. So, I'm going to send out this full-strength fighter to engage the enemy fighter squadron. There appears to be a destroyer in the vicinity. Smoke has been popped. There is a perfect example of my shift queue system. I'm going to kill the lower health squadron, and then I'm going to immediately transition to the other squadron that has 5. And I didn't have to input another command. It just swapped because it was shifted. It was in a queue of actions to perform. So you need to take advantage of that. That's one tip I'll give you guys. Another tip I would say, don't be afraid to just use your squadrons as scouts. Now, I know the game doesn't give you scouting rewards, but it's very important to your team, especially if you're scouting for destroyers. Now, I see that the enemy torpedo bombers and dive bombers are going to try and assault my friendly cruisers. They provided so much support for me. I'm going to try and intercept any enemy squadrons that I can. And it looks like they're going to get all their attacks before I can intercept. And unfortunately, I'm getting intercepted. You want to go after the fighters first, clearly. They're the ones who can attack you. And you can see more queuing. Once I destroy that fighter squadron, I will move on. I don't know if I'll have enough ammo, but that's the plan. And whenever you run out of ordnance, it will immediately cancel all of your actions and try to head back to your ship to rearm by default. I don't believe you can change that, so you don't have to pay attention and watch your torpedo bombers or your dive bombers or your fighters continue to try and perform the actions if they have no ammo to perform them. So we have rearmed our torpedo and our dive bomber, and we're going to send them out. Ideal target, enemy battleship. This is a US battleship, I believe. It looks sluggish. I don't even need to look at the name to just know, yes, it's a Wyoming. And you can see using Alt will make the dive bomb more accurate. And again, I can use a shift command. I can pinpoint the position to be in front of the vessel and then shift Alt dive bomb to do a manual drop that's more accurate and have it angled correctly. And we spot the destroyer. We went back to make sure he stays spotted until he's killed. That's a very important skill that every carrier captain should do. Take out those destroyers. You are the best scout in the game. Take advantage of that. And we have a nice, clean manual drop on this enemy battleship. And we get 5 of the torpedoes to make contact with the ship. We cause flooding. Most likely, he will have to use damage control. And I see Eastern half is doing a great job of maintaining control. So everything's going according to plan. They have 2 carriers to R1, but they're really not taking advantage of that extra ability to be around the map and harass, right? They're really just funneling their attacks into me and my cruiser buddies. We've really held off the aircraft. We've minimized their impact on the game, and because of that, we are finding more success, in my opinion. Now, this New Mexico is about to die. Now, if I have to decide what I want to torpedo, I will attempt to attack a higher value target, like a New Mexico, versus a Wyoming. The New Mexico has more armor, better guns, better AA. It's risky, but the reward is worth it. You're helping your team win, you're taking out a target that could do more damage to the team. And if they're isolated, it's an extra bonus because they have really no answer to you. Now, I kind of get slowed and caught here. The cruiser's fighter engaged my fighter squadron, and I needed to answer. I wasn't going to be able to move, and that prevented me from stopping this torpedo bomber from launching their torpedoes. And I made use of the shift command. Again, it's a huge advantage. Less micromanagement and more time spent out on the map. Clearly, 3 squadrons, that's not very hard. But at late tier, you're commanding 6, 7, and 8 squadrons. You need to be efficient with your actions so you can pay more attention to the map and supporting your team and locating destroyers or enemy ships that are trying to hide. And we're getting decimated. We are just over the enemy cruiser and we're locked there. We're going to lose that squadron, unfortunately. And that's going to be the last little bit I have. I'm hoping that they don't die, clearly. But I don't have any ammo. I'm engaged. Friendly battleship is taking a lot. It doesn't look good for him. And yep, he's finally finished off. I didn't want to have to use my dive bomber and my torpedo bomber on a Wyoming that's low health. I would much rather try and take out this enemy cruiser. I'll be more helpful to the team, and I'll do more potential damage to the enemy team. And it looks like he backed up a lot, and now he's moving forward, so we need to be careful, because the island is going to be in the way of the shot if he chooses to go closer to the island, which he doesn't. And cruisers are faster than battleships, so you need to lead him a little bit more. We predict that he's going to want to maneuver towards our torpedoes, so we send out our torpedoes with plenty of distance. Unfortunately, he avoids all but 2, but we do a lot of damage, and we cause flooding. He will have to use damage control if he hasn't already, and he will be susceptible to fires set by HE. And you really need to keep damage control in your mind anytime you're in any ship that can provide a debuff to the target. So flooding for destroyers and carriers, and fires for anyone who's firing HE or dive bombers with high explosive bombs. That's a vulnerability that you can take advantage of. And this guy is getting destroyed. He doesn't have the health anymore. He can't engage. He can't be aggressive, and he's going to die. And part of that is because we were able to do so much damage to him. Between our 2 torpedoes and causing flooding, we've basically locked up the western side. So I'm going to move forward with my teammates. We have 3 cruisers and a battleship here. We're going to try and move to the enemy base. We know that there's an enemy Cleveland and 2 enemy aircraft carriers somewhere on the northeast side. And it looks like they are getting hammered over there by the enemy aircraft carriers. They can easily attack without any risk to their ship. That's the huge advantage of aircraft carriers, clearly. Oh! One of the aircraft carriers is actually at the enemy base. That is interesting. That is a very bad strategy, in my opinion. You can see that the other one is northeast, near the enemy Cleveland. And since we're in the Independence, we actually have speed, unlike the Bogue, which can barely get over 16 knots. Yeah. It was awful. It was hell on earth. So, in my mind, this carrier is already dead, because the cruisers are far too strong and far too close to it for it to be able to escape. So I make the decision to not go after it at all. That would be a waste of a bomb. There is only 6 minutes left in the game, and theoretically, we could be at those 6 minutes trying to chase down the Cleveland and the other aircraft carrier. You can see that the Alba, the last remaining Eastern ally, is about to die. So I want to get the Zuiho, probably put pressure on the Cleveland to defend him. And once the Zuiho is defeated, we can go after the Cleveland. The Cleveland is very scary. Any aircraft carrier, you are terrified of the Cleveland. They are so strong with their anti-aircraft. So you don't really want to have to go after them until you are forced to. It's much more advantageous to leave it up to your team to take care of them. And dive bomber first. We're going to try and get his decks lit up. He doesn't have any aircraft to respond. And ideally, we'll be able to use a manual drop on an aircraft carrier. They're so large. But we go with automatic. He's turning. I just want to get a bomb on him, which we do. We get 2 fires set. You can see them burning even from up here, and he put them out. So he's going to not be immune to flooding if we cause it. Hopefully we do. And that will be a huge advantage. And he turns right into this manual drop. And we're going to get what looks like 5 torpedoes, and we kill him outright. Fantastic. So now there's only the enemy Cleveland. I think I'm the one spotting. I believe the island is in the way, so I'm going to keep my dive bomber in the vicinity just to provide spotting. I'm going to allow my torpedo bomber to rearm because I feel the torpedo bomber is more effective at doing damage. And I'm going to scout. Scouting is probably the most important skill that no carrier does, it seems. Enemy destroyers, they hate you. I hate you when I'm in my destroyer. You can make the game awful for me if you just hover over my position. I can't run away. Even if you pop smoke, I just hover over it. You turn off your guns. I hover over you. Your guns are on. It'll take you 3 minutes to kill my squadron. I'm going to hover over you. You're going to be dead before you can respond to the squadron scouting you. And that's really one thing I would love all carrier captains to do, is consider the power you have in spotting. Intel. So this Cleveland is just running. He is done for. I am on the cap with my brothers. Me and the 3 cruisers, we basically have carried this game. We were able to hold the western flank and then push into the enemy base. And we still have 3 minutes left. That's the ideal scenario for any game. This will not be a draw. He's burning down. Is he going to die to guns? It looks like he died to guns. Awesome. So, we only get 1 kill, but we did a lot of torpedo damage that our friendlies followed up. We took out 25 enemy aircraft, so that basically ruined the carrier's day. Pretty high base XP, 2,337. Over 100,000 points of damage between torpedo damage, flooding, and fire. I hope you have a great day, and I'll catch you next time.